Neemt u plaats.
Your Excellencies, Mr. Mayor, dear members of the board, dear colleagues, dear guests. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this public meeting of the Senate of the University of Groningen. This afternoon we are attending the inaugural lecture of Dr. Verkooijen, appointed at the Ban Ki-moon Chair of Climate Adaptation Governance at the campus Friesland and the Faculty of Spatial Sciences. An inaugural lecture commemorates the newly appointed professor's official acceptance of the chair. Preceding the lecture, a colleague of the newly appointed professor is asked to introduce the professor by means of a laudation, offering us a glimpse of the professor's life and career. I call upon Dr. Switter, Professor of Political Theory and Governance at the campus Friesland, to introduce our new colleague and ask Professor Verkooijen to subsequently present his inaugural lecture. But before Dr. Switter takes the floor, I invite you all to watch a video message from Ban Ki-moon, Honorary Doctor of the University of Groningen since 2018.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and students, I'm sorry that I cannot be with you today in person on the occasion of the inauguration of Professor Patrick Verkooijen. I'm truly honored by having my name associated with the chair of Climate Adaptation Governance, and I'm also deeply moved by the initiative for which Dr. Verkooijen, who is also Chancellor of the University of Nairobi, Kenya, takes the credit. For those who do not know Professor, I urge you to take every opportunity to spend time with him. You will not regret the experience. In the course of my career as a foreign minister of the Republic of Korea and 10 years as a Secretary General of the United Nations, I have met tens of thousands of people from all parts of the world. I have met political leaders such as kings, presidents, prime ministers, ministers, etc., and distinguished scholars, as well as development and aid workers. With my hand on my heart, I can tell you that Patrick Verkooijen is the most extraordinary person of all those whom I have met. I'm not exaggerating. His passion for his field of expertise remains undimmed, and it is matched only by his dedication to advancing the cause of climate adaptation. Patrick, I say this to you directly now. You are the top of the very top. You are a leader with a vision and integrity. Yes, both in abundance, but most of all, with a passion for your cause. And in my experience, this is a very difficult combination to discover, even in the most exceptionally gifted people. I have observed those qualities in others, but never in the absolutely perfect balance that you possess. You find it only rarely, and it has been my rare fortune to work closely with you over many years. Our close relationship began when you had visited me at the Harvard University to discuss how I could continue to help advance the climate agenda. Not long after, we met with President Macron of France in Paris during the One Planet Summit conference, and you invited me to be chair of the Global Commission on Adaptation, GCA. Without hesitation, I said yes, and it was a decision which I have never regretted for a moment. We have traveled far since the launch of GCA in 2018 in The Hague. The Global Center on Adaptation, which you lead, has achieved many great things. I'm sure it will continue on its current path of expansion and success for adapting the world to rising temperature and its consequences. My warmest congratulations on this special day, and I send you and everyone in attendance today my warmest wishes. Thank you.
Director, dear members of the board, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests. It is an immense honor to deliver this laudatio for Professor Patrick Verkooijen, a visionary leader, academic, and champion of global climate adaptation. Today we celebrate not only his extraordinary contributions to the fields of climate governance and sustainable development, but also his enduring commitment to academia and the transformative power of education. My own personal encounter with Patrick Verkooijen was on a remarkable day, October 17, 2018, when the University of Groningen awarded an honorary doctorate to former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, that you have just heard. On the same day, together with Dr. Ban, Professor Verkooijen inaugurated the Groningen headquarters of the Global Center on Adaptation in the Energy Academy building at Zernike campus. It was at this event and on this occasion that I witnessed his passion and his drive firsthand. His visionary nature and his determination to position the University of Groningen as a global platform for climate adaptation, education and governance left a lasting impression with me, and together we decided to embark on a joint mission. This was also the moment for a collaborative, transformative journey. As the founding CEO of the Global Center on Adaptation, Professor Patrick Verkooijen has brought Secretary Ban Ki-moon's vision to life, establishing the Global Center as the foremost international organization dedicated to adopting our world to a climate-resilient future. Under his leadership, the GCA has spearheaded adaptation projects in over 30 countries and co-launched the 25 billion African Adaptation Acceleration Program alongside African Development Bank President Dr. Adesina. This initiative has already led to a mobilization of over 15 billion in resilient investments, offering hope and opportunity to the world's most affected by climate change. These achievements highlight his ability to bridge global policy with local resilience and tangible action. His contribution at the University of Groningen extends beyond just institutional milestones to global impact. It is driven by a deep commitment to the students and their future. For example, together with our dedicated team at Campus Friesland, in collaboration with Professor Verkooijen and the GCA, we have together pioneered massive open online courses on climate adaptation governance and urban resilience. And these courses have reached more than 10,000 students worldwide. The programs were rated 4.5 stars out of 5 and still up till today are being very sought after. Moreover, his leadership has been pivotal in organizing landmark events such as the High-Level Youth Forum in September 2021 in Leeuwarden, which brought together dignitaries including UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, Abdul Momen, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh, Vera Songwe, UN Under-Secretary-General and Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa, as well as students and staff in dialogue with the GCA's Goodwill Ambassador Arjen Robben. And when I mention who all visited Leeuwarden at that time, people said, Arjen Robben was in Leeuwarden. His dedication to students is also evident in initiatives like the op-ed competition that he did with our bachelor programs, the best bachelor program, allow me to brag here a little bit, in the Netherlands since 4 years, Global Responsibility and Leadership. And Patrick's commitment to this bachelor program has also brought it where it is today. The winner of the op-ed competition, Marai Tolsma, had the opportunity to engage in international policy discussions, including accompanying Professor Verkooijen to the COP29. Now, as the newly appointed Chancellor of University of Nairobi, Professor Verkooijen has set forth an inspiring vision for Africa and its youth. His Big Five strategy outlines transformative priorities. Creating Silicon Savannah as a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. Establishing Kenya's Green Job Center to align education with the green economy. Launching the first AI school in Kenya to prepare graduates for a tech-driven future. Founding a leadership institute in partnership with Harvard University, and doubling down on advancements in health sciences. And last but not least, establishing important PhD trajectories together with the University of Groningen and the University of Kenya that we are so proud to have already filled. This vision positions the University of Nairobi together with its partners as a catalyst for Africa's ascent, empowering its students and ensuring higher education becomes the driving force behind the continent's development. Throughout his career, Professor Verkooijen has demonstrated unwavering commitment to empowering the next generation of leaders. He views education as a cornerstone of transformation, means through which the daughter of a small farmer can become a doctor, means through which the son of a miner can start managing that mine, and means through which the child of a peasant can rise to presidency. His deep connection to Kenya, built over decades of engagement, to Africa and to the world, reflects his admiration for resilience and determination of its people. In conclusion, Professor Verkooijen's work reminds us that the challenges of our era, climate change, inequality, and the need for sustainable development, can only be met with 3 things: vision, action, and collaboration. Through his pioneering leadership, he has transformed institutions, inspired individuals, and mobilized global efforts to create a more equitable and resilient world. I, for one, count myself privileged to call Professor Verkooijen a dear colleague and friend. Today, as we honor him, let us celebrate his legacy and look forward to the many ways he will continue to shape the future as the Ban Ki-moon Chair of Climate Adaptation at the University of Groningen. Professor Verkooijen, it is a privilege to recognize your extraordinary contributions, and on behalf of all present here today, I extend my deepest gratitude and my warmest congratulations.
Thank you, Professor Switter. New world order. A new world order. We have an entirely new world order today. You know it already. You're living it. We may not want this new world order, but we have it. And we're getting more of it. And the sooner we wake up to this reality, the sooner we can take smart decisions for how to prosper in it. Think about it. A new global trade war, relocation of all Palestinians from Gaza, USA idea, the US government's development arm, which supports the poor in Africa, in South Asia, in Latin America, dismantled. American support to all multilateral on the questions. Withdrawal from agencies established over decades like the World Health Organization. These changes, ladies and gentlemen, they're not limited to the United States alone. Think about it. Elections in Germany, in Canada, in Australia this year. Political developments from France to Korea, to Norway, to right here in the Netherlands. By end of year, virtually every Western nation with clout is likely right-wing. And the shift to the right is not a glitch. It's the democratic will of the people. And a response to some very legitimate concerns. COVID, Ukraine, cost of living crisis, families hurting, over 50,000 asylum seekers entering the Netherlands last year, Ter Apel, a village close by where I was raised, 9,000 people in Ter Apel, hosting over 2,000 asylum seekers on any given day. Where are we going? Well, spending on defense is going to go up. Spending on other priorities, including education, set to go down. Environmental regulations are set to go out. And large-scale deportation of people is set to go in. Drill, drill, drill. Dig, dig, dig. That is the new policy playbook. President Jouke de Vries, acting rector magnificus, Prime Minister Balkenende, ambassadors, honorable mayor, honorable deans, students and faculty, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, my family here present. My name indeed is Patrick Verkooijen. I'm the proud CEO of the Global Center on Adaptation and the Chancellor of the University of Nairobi. And I'm absolutely honored and I'm absolutely humbled to speak following the extremely generous words by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, my mentor for many years, and in my view, the greatest international statesman alive today, after who this university's chair of climate adaptation is named. So, Honorable President, Honorable Rector, Honorable Deans, I'm extremely honored to accept the tenure as chair of this program. And I thank all of you here today joining this inaugural lecture. New World Order. So my central thesis, ladies and gentlemen, today is this. We are in a planetary endgame. And to be specific, I'm calling it a Resilience Endgame. Why? Because to adapt to our new reality around us, it is the very last get-out-of-jail-free card society has. And playing that card, or not, will affect everything we do from this point onwards. New world order. We have to reimagine everything about how we govern our planet. So, friends, let us begin by considering where we are in this dilemma. I was negotiating, indeed, the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. I was the World Bank's special representative for climate change. The goal of Paris is to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. Why? Because scientists like yourself have said that 1.5 degrees warming is the last safe guardrail for life on Earth. Let's do a reality check. Last December, the UN Environment Programme found that we will hit 1.5 degrees in the next 2.5 years. Not in 10 years, not in 30 years, not in 50 years, in the next 2.5 years. That's technically tomorrow. But it should not come as a surprise. The pandemic aside, emissions have been going up ever since the Paris Agreement, year in, year after. Last year, 2024, emissions were the highest on record ever. And with it, record-breaking temperature, deadly heat waves, crippling drought, devastating floods, turbocharged hurricanes, a planet on fire. And we all see these changes around us. But we knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. We simply have not delivered bold enough action to stop at 1.5. And the Paris regime, ladies and gentlemen, suffers a terminal illness. And President Donald Trump has simply pulled the plug from its life support system. We had a decade to get the world on track. 2015 to now. Well, society has come up short. We failed. Paris was a 1.5 plan. We're headed for 3. So now the bottom line is we have to live with the consequences. We're stuck on this overheated planet, and there's no way we can go back. Stuck in a world where each half degree of extra warming doubles disasters. That's, ladies and gentlemen, that's the math. That's the reality. But I see my family in the front row. Before you get too worried, this is not going to be a doomsday lecture, I assure you. In fact, I'm absolutely convinced, absolutely determined that effective adaptation leads us to a bright future. More than just getting out of jail for free, in fact, investing in adaptation, to speak with Errol's world, is the winning hand. But let's not be naive. My basic predictions for the next 5 years are this. 1, greenhouse gas emissions will continue to rise. 2, international climate and development finance, you said it during lunch, Ambassador of Tanzania, it will shrink. Climate impacts will go up. More people on the move. The insurance sector in retreat. Think about the insurance sector for a second. Across the United States, we saw the fires in California, didn't you? Well, the top insurance firm in California did not renew 70% of its clients in the Pacific Palisades. For the few holding on, premiums went up by 50%. And think for a second, and Prime Minister Balkenende raised it over lunch this afternoon, the financial system in shock. Banks will be hesitant to write new mortgages, their portfolios exposed to all the new climate risk. This is where the rubber hits the road, where all of you will feel the heat in your pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, your pensions exposed. Prime Minister Balkenende, my mentor and fellow board member at the Global Center on Adaptation, you may be spared, but for sure your daughter Emily is here. She will be affected. Let me bring it close to home. In the front row here today, my son Nicholas is 20. Please stand up, son Nicholas. Nicholas enters the workforce in the next 5 years. At least that's what we hope. But this is a 1.5 degrees world, and you, Nicholas, will live through the developments I just predicted. Our children are about to enter a world where climate disasters are twice as bad as the ones we remember. My twin daughters, Fleur and Romee, just turned 17. Please stand up. Fleur and Romee are going to enter the workforce about 5 years later than Nicholas. But Fleur and Romee and all your compatriots, you will certainly live a close to 2 degrees world by then. And once again, think about it. A 2 degrees world can be twice as bad or worse than a 1.5 world. But there is more. Also joining us today is my youngest son, Vicente. Vicente, please stand up. Vicente is 6 years old. Give him a round of applause, Vicente. Because when Vicente enters the world of work, some 2 decades from now, many of the young students here in this room will be middle-aged like I am today, but facing, like Vicente, a 3+ world of warming. Think about it. When 1.5 is out of the window to avoid a 2 degree world, or even a 3 degrees world, that is now. When we know very well that populism, which we see across the globe, will take us down the exact opposite path from Paris. New world order. Now, I did promise this will not be an apocalyptic speech. So how do we move from here? That's where the Resilience Endgame comes in. Let's talk about resilience and adaptation for a moment. Starting with the definition of adaptation. Any takers? Adaptation, it simply means to adjust to new and different conditions, to adjust, to adapt to new and different conditions. So what about resilience? Resilience means the ability to rebound from a shock. What's not to like? We must adapt, we must be resilient. If not, we lose out. That's the basic premise even of the survival of our species. But when change is fast, as we see today, if we're not ahead of the curve, as we see today, we can lose out big. We are in the resilience endgame. The only real question, President de Vries, will we play to win? To give this perspective, this question some perspective, allow me to share an example, not from here, not from the Netherlands, but from Africa, the world's most climate vulnerable continent. 15 years ago, I also served as the first ever head of climate smart agriculture at the World Bank. So I traveled, as part of my role, I traveled to Kenya. I visited a farmer, Ann Akini. Where? In Kisumu, Western Africa, Western Kenya. We financed 60,000 smallholder farmers. What did we do? Digital weather advisories, smart irrigation, agroforestry. And Anne, on that day in Kisumu, was showing me her farm as part of the program. Only thing was, over here, I saw Anne's farm flourishing. Over there, I saw a wasteland. I said, Anne, why is this? Well, she said, those farms there, they're not part of the program. They were not adapted. They were not resilient. Anne's farm was. So when the droughts came, Anne's family was well fed. And when the next year the floods came, Anne didn't need to pull out her kids to school. Her production had doubled. And that is exactly where the economics of adaptation comes in, which is extremely simple. Adaptation, investment in adaptation. And all the ambassadors present here today from the Global South will testify, adaptation pays. For every dollar, euro, pound, Kenyan shilling invested in early warning systems, productive agriculture, resilient roads, supply chains, adaptation returns between 2 and 10 dollars, euros, pounds, Kenyan shillings. That's not a cost. That's an opportunity. We have some investors here in the room, including Alexander Boer. That's smart investment. So through Anne, I identified a principle, and I called it the triple dividend, or if you like, the triple win. That is, when you invest in adaptation, you avoid economic losses. When you invest in adaptation, you generate positive economic gains. When you invest in adaptation, you enhance social and environmental benefits. So through my time at the World Bank, and since presiding over the Global Center on Adaptation, the GCA, everywhere I have traveled, I see evidence of these dividends, of these wins. In Algeria, in Australia, in Tanzania, in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Ivory Coast, and obviously also here in the Netherlands. Adaptation, ladies and gentlemen, my bottom line message is not a nice to have, as Professor Schitter said. It's a job strategy, it's a growth strategy, it's an economic winner. The catch, though, is this. Smart, resilient investment, such as in infrastructure or in agriculture, pays off only if and when you have the financial resources that are available in the first place. And of course, as the mayor of Leeuwarden will testify, the world is not the Netherlands. Here, where adaptation in the Netherlands is central to everything that we do for centuries, here, where 2/3 of the nation is below the high tide mark, here, where we turned water into land, land into production, survival into prosperity, adaptation, not just survival, but smart economics. But the reality, the sad reality, though, is this. If you're living not in the Netherlands, but if you live in a poor country, think about it, you're 5 times more likely to die of a weather disaster than you will live in a rich one. That is why we're in the midst of a 21st century, and I call it, as it is, climate apartheid. In this climate apartheid, without adaptation, the wealthy invest and grow richer, while the vulnerable in Africa, in Asia, in the small island development states are left behind to drown, to burn, or to flee. So, how do we break out of this downward spiral? And why does it even matter for the developed world, for people who vote here in the Netherlands? Why does it matter what's happening in the global south? Remember, New World Order. We will not find our way forward without a fundamental rethinking, retooling, reimagining of how we do business. But let's not be naive. Our political environment, including in the Netherlands, is running a fever. Our planet is running a fever. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me offer you today 3 key suggestions for reimagining our world order. First, we need to reimagine the global social contract. To reimagine the global social contract. I come back to it. Second, we need to reimagine the global finance and development system. And third, we need to reimagine research, innovation, and higher learning. Let me take them one by one briefly. 1, global social contract. Thomas Hobbes. You remember him for your paper. He warned against the war of all against all. We listened just now to Ban Ki-moon, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations. The United Nations was created 80 years ago, out of the ashes of the Second World War. For much of that time, the last 80 years, multilateralism, global cooperation, has expanded. Today, it's at an all-time low. But why is that? Let's go back. Let's look at the shortcomings of the Paris Climate Agreement. By many commentators seen as the world's most successful global pact on paper, signed in record time. More countries than nearly any other agreement ever signed up to the Paris Agreement, and yet not implemented, not delivered on, falling to pieces. So, as a graduate at Harvard, I was a student of international negotiations. And in international negotiations, you know and I know, there is a cardinal rule that the path to any negotiation outcome cannot, should not be zero-sum. And it needs to be clear to all in any negotiation just what you get out of it. Nations have failed on Paris because Paris failed to deliver clear mutual gains for them. Think about it. We're wealthier, we're healthier, we're more educated than ever before. But global economic growth today is slowing down. We live in a low growth, high debt, sticky inflation world. But that's not the whole picture. Economic growth, highest in the poorest nations. Economic growth, lowest in the rich nations. So this divergence obviously brings challenges, but also opportunities. For the rich nations, and Prime Minister, you have leading our nation very capably for 8 years, for rich nations to prosper, developed nations, they have to do more business with emerging economies. Only thing is, here is the catch. Foreign investors
won't do business with risky operators in risky nations, where supply chains from Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana, Ivory Coast are disrupted because of storms and floods. Risky nations need de-risking game plans. Let's think about Africa. Africa is currently a net food importer. If we turn it around, Africa can feed the world if and only if it future-proofs its food sector. In Africa, we have a youth quake on the continent. 1 million sub-Saharan young Africans go to the labor market every single month. 1 million. Only 1 in 4 lands a formal job. But Africa, at the same time, has also 2/3 of the world's untapped arable land ready for agricultural production. That is ground for a genuine new partnership between the global South and the global North. We should seize it. Which brings me, honorable deans, to my second point. We have to reimagine our global financial and development systems. That might be a wordful. What does it even mean? Of course, you know, we know, I know, that it also happens to be that the Bretton Woods, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund are also 8 decades old. And what do they do on any given Monday, the World Bank and the IMF? And what is their track record over the last 80 years? Well, they helped lift billions of people, of poor people, out of extreme poverty. And the IMF kept financial meltdowns to a minimum. But if you live in Kenya, if you live in Kisumu, or Makueni, or Mombasa, you live in a country, Kenya, or Tanzania, or Ghana, which is cash-strapped and overburdened with debt. And if you happen to be a president of one of those nations, or a minister of finance, you're confronted with tough choices. You invest in education or in climate. You invest to pay off your debt or to fund healthcare. Then, in these countries, natural disaster strikes, and these tough choices become even more pronounced. And this just as climate and development finance from the North is being pulled back. Remember, New World Order. So the most fundamental priority, therefore, is to mainstream resilience and adaptation across all financing. Think about it. This is because it's not very abstract, it's super concrete. Any building, any road, any bridge, any dam, any power plant, any electricity line, any school, hospital, community center, farm or fishing operation in the global South under development needs to become climate resilient. Think about it, building a road which will be washed away 5 years from now, that's not good development, that's bad development. These roads, that infrastructure needs to be resilient. And the only way to reach resilient development, it has to be done, and it's my personal mantra, at speed and scale. We're running out of time. So we at the Global Center on Adaptation, and I'm humbled also to have many of our colleagues here in the room, we have focused our energy to future-proof as many projects as possible that are financed by the World Bank, by the African Development Bank, by the EBRD, by EIB, by IFC. We finance and work with them to make sure that their development projects are climate resilient. So, Professor Switter, you already mentioned it.
together with the African Union and the African Development Bank, by the end of this year, we will have future-proofed more than 25 billion US dollars of projects in some 40 African nations. Tens of millions of beneficiaries across Africa. That's indeed our flagship Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program known as AAAP, but we must double down on that success. Today is Valentine's Day. Tomorrow, there is the Africa Union Summit convened in Addis. And what is on the table there is the next phase of the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, which is bigger, which is bolder, which is more inclusive. Because Africa, as Prime Minister Balkenende and I have heard over and over again, Prime Minister, you spoke to President Ruto recently, and he told you, and I was privy of that conversation, that Africa is ready to offer a genuine partnership in this era. We must seize it. And as the Ambassador of Australia reminded us today, we need to bring this model of mainstreaming resilience into development also to other regions, to Asia, to the small island development states. And that's exactly what we're planning to do. We are expanding our partnership with the IMF. Last month in Davos, I had the honor to launch the first ever business leaders platform on adaptation at the World Economic Forum, so that commercial banks build resilience into their lending portfolio. Which brings me, students, to the third reimagining. We, from the world of finance, cannot possibly mainstream resilience without a massive parallel investment in research and education. To succeed, I'm speaking now as Ban Ki-moon chair, the universities and the research institutions have to follow the vision of President De Vries. We have to become much more connected to the world of action and much more collaboratively globally. Take CGIAR, horrible acronym. What is it? It's a consortium of the world's best international research on agriculture. But the outcomes of CGIAR very often does not leave the CGIAR and does not get into the hands of Anne and the fellow millions of ants across the globe. So I'm extremely proud that we as GCA and we as University of Groningen, we now have a partnership with the CGIAR, linking their expertise, their innovation to the world of finance. And the students, and I encourage all of you students and those who are listening online to sign up to the Ban Ki-moon program on adaptation governance. Why? Because you will be connected to the world of action through your thesis, through your PhDs, through fellowships, to internships, through your masters. We as GCA, together with the Ban Ki-moon chair, we plan to provide the conveyor belt between the world of research and the world of action. But, Honorable Acting Rector Magnificus, a huge part of that will also be reimagine knowledge partnerships itself. What works in Miami may not work in Mombasa. But the flip side is also true. Even the Netherlands has adopted water management experiences, innovation from Bangladesh. So we must prioritize global research partnerships across different continents, across different regions. But the good news is this. 2 months ago, we developed here in this university the global model. Because this university is working now hand in hand with the University of Nairobi on adaptation research. And the first PhD student, he's here. Where are you? Indeed, from Kenya, is already with us. And the first training academies, with help from Groningen faculty, even with you, President de Vries, when you keynote lectured it, have already taken place in Nairobi. Dozens and dozens and dozens of students in the Global South are already being trained in adaptation through collaboration with this university. And going forward, the Ban Ki-moon Chair, GCA, and the University of Groningen writ large, we will replicate. We will scale these north-south, south-north, north-north, south-south partnerships as part of this chair group. So, ladies and gentlemen, by accepting this Ban Ki-moon chair, I'm also here to say we're open for business. So, students, on this Friday late afternoon, let me conclude with some departing thoughts and address you specifically. My generation, I consider myself a middle-aged man. My generation looks at the world through a lens of constraints. Students, your generation, you're growing up in a hyper-digital era. You only see possibilities. So our generation, we have to learn, we have to listen from you. And it's exactly what the Resilient Endgame is all about. It's a world full of opportunities. In closing, let me bring it home to Ter Apel. For many years, I lived very close to Ter Apel. And recently, we have seen that the Ukraine war created 7 million refugees. And besides the Ukraine war, whole regions of the world at 2 or 3 degrees, which we're entering, could be rendered uninhabitable if we do not get our act together. People massively on the move. In the United States, I think, Prime Minister, you visited the US during the elections. In the US, we will no longer have blue states and red states. We will have risky states or resilient states. We won't have 2,000 asylum seekers in Ter Apel. We will have 100,000 asylum seekers. We can't solve Ter Apel in Groningen. We can't solve it in The Hague. We may not even be solved in Brussels. We need to solve it in Africa, addressing the root causes. Getting resilience right leads to a rising tide that lifts all ships. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, beloved family, I would like to return to Anne Akini. It was Anne that taught me we are at the sunrise of a resilience revolution. Anne Akini. Her last name Akini means in Luo, the local language in Kenya, it means born in the morning. And that is exactly the inflection point where we are right now. The resilience revolution is here. The only question is, though, whether we will embrace it or we pay the price of ignoring it. A new global social contract will make us unstoppable. A transformational financial and development system will make us unstoppable. A knowledge sector built for the future will make us unstoppable. By putting adaptation and resilience at the heart of everything what we do, we become unstoppable at last. The Resilience Endgame is the winning play. With that, I have spoken. Ik heb gezegd, and specifically for Anne, thank you very much. Asante sana. Thank you.